It is our great honor and my distinct honor today to honor Dr. Ron Hull with the Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters. This degree recognizes individuals who have made extraordinary contributions to humanity, most often in the arts and letters. It gives me pleasure to introduce today's commencement speaker, someone who needs no introduction throughout most of Nebraska. Dr. Ron Hull is a pioneer in public television, serving as program manager for Nebraska ETV network from 55 to 82. Hull continues to serve as a senior advisor to Nebraska Educational Telecommunications and is a professor emeritus at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He was instrumental in bringing many of public television's most renowned programs to the screen. The University of Nebraska Press recently published Dr. Hull's autobiography, Backstage Stories from My Life in Public Television. Dr. Hull's service has gone far beyond television. He has been heavily involved in the Maury Sandoz Heritage Society since its inception. Through his involvement with the society, he was instrumental in the development of the Maury Sandoz High Plains Heritage Center on the CSC campus. For more than a decade, the center has served as a hub of learning on the CSC campus, and it pays tribute to one of the most significant Great Plains authors. For his help in furthering the cause of education and CSC's mission, it gives us great pride to present the Doctor of Humane Letters to Dr. Ron Hull. Ron?
You're good. Thank you. Oh, I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Do I just start talking?
The microphone is yours.
Dr. Ryan, first of all, thanks for plugging my book. That was nice of him. Dr. Ryan, distinguished faculty, many of whom are friends, honored graduates, those wonderful families out there, I know the sacrifices you've made. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I mean that. I've loved Chadron State College for 40 years, and it's been a big part of my life. I'm going to make this as short as I can. Yay! But I do have a couple things to say, and I want to say this. I've discovered that the most important aspect of our lives are the relationships that we have with each other. Nothing passes that. I know when I was in college, I remember some cynics would say, oh, you won't get ahead, it depends on who you know, like it was some terrible thing. It's true. It depends on who you know, but you make those connections yourself, and nobody can do that but you. And believe me, it is these interpersonal relationships that we develop that give meaning to our lives. And every single person in this room spends most of their life searching for meaning in our lives. We want to amount to something. We want to do something good for other people. Well, one person I always like to talk about is Maury Sandoz, because she taught me so much. I knew her well. I did 18 hours worth of television programs with her over the years. This was a woman. She had the same traits you did because she was a High Plains person. She gave 100% of herself, her energy, her talent to tell the stories of the people of the High Plains country. We owe her a lot. But she worked harder than almost anybody I have ever worked with, and I want to give you this example. She would tell you her best book is Crazy Horse, Strange Man of the Ogalallas. She said, that came the closest to reaching the height that I tried to reach with every book. That came the closest. It's my best work. Okay, she lived in a little apartment, 422 Hudson Street in the West Village in New York. She finished her book, and if you've ever typed double-spaced, you have a manuscript that stands off the floor about that high. She said, I sat back in this wing-back chair, and I read it then, when I finished it, right straight through. She said, it's a wonderful story. But she said, my heart sank. She said, I wrote this story, but I told it in white man's words, white man's idiom, and it didn't ring true. And then she said, I closed my eyes, and I remembered being a little girl, 8 years old, on the Niobrara place, Old Jules' first place up there. She said, I remember sounds can so bring back the past. And I closed my eyes, and she said, I heard the Indians bringing the little Indian ponies up over the hill behind our place down to the river for water. And what I heard was this. It was a thrum, 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 a rhythmic cadence of those pony hoofs thrumping. And she said, that's it. She started over and rewrote a book she'd worked on for 3 years, and she built in that little rhythmic cadence to give it the authenticity that she knew it had to have. And she would say, I don't know if it does it for you, it does it for me. And that's it. But I also know the traits Mari Sandoz had are your traits too. Hard work, give it your best shot. We're Western people, I'm from Rapid City. You've got it already because you're High Plains people, and I love the High Plains. Another Nebraskan I'd like to share a memory with was John Neihardt. He's our poet laureate in perpetuity. Neihardt was a poet, he was a writer. I think the best thing he ever did was Black Elk Speaks. And I know you've been all too busy studying, etc., but when you have time to read Black Elk Speaks. There is so much knowledge in that on how to live our lives. It's a history of the Ogallala people, of course, but I learned so much from that book. And I want to tell you something. He told this story to me one day. He was a teacher at the University of Missouri for 40 years. Now, this was during the Vietnam War, and things were pretty chaotic in this country, as you know. He said, I had this wonderful student, this young man, that he was one of the best students he'd ever had, and suddenly he started not coming to class. Suddenly his grades were going down, and he said, I called him in, and I said, what is going on with you? And the boy said, Dr. Neihardt, just look around at this world. Look at this war and the people that are dying, and look at the starvation, and look at all the horrible things going on all around me. He said, why should I try to excel? What's the use? Why should I? Neihardt said, well, you know, you're right. We could take 24 hours and we could talk about how terrible things are in this country, our lives. Everywhere you look, you'll find something that's not good. But he said, if we're going to do that, then let's take 24 hours and let's talk about the things around you that are good and that are wonderful. And he said, when you walked across this campus today, and this goes for all of you today, that's a beautiful campus. Did you notice the beauty of the buildings and the grounds and the work that Lucinda, for one, is doing on this campus? That's what he said to the boy. And he said, do you like to eat? And the kid said, of course. He said, I bet you like steak and pork and chickens and things like that. The kid said, of course. He said, tell me, do you eat the slop we throw out to the hogs? And the kid said, well, of course not. Neihardt said, well, why not? There's plenty of it. No. You choose. We all choose. You choose the life you want to have. And if you have the life you want, believe me, that's the first step to happiness. Now, I went to the State Department, recruited me in 1966 to go to Vietnam and to help set up a television network for the Vietnamese people in the South. President Johnson wanted to win the hearts and minds of the people of Vietnam. Now, they never had television. They had radio, and they made some movies, but they'd never seen television. It was such an opportunity, and I have a wonderful wife sitting over here who got left behind with 4 children under the age of 8. I have to throw that in because I happen to be married to a woman who simply looked me in the face when I said, I think I want to go to Vietnam during the war. And she said, is this something you feel you really have to do? And I said, yes, I think so. I think I have to do it. And she said, then let's sit down and reorganize our lives and see how we're going to do all of this. She never once said, you can't do this. What about these 4 children, et cetera, et cetera. She gave me the freedom to go off. Well, I want to tell you about a couple of people I met in Vietnam. Our studio where I worked had a long, low-hanging eave. Very low, high up, but I mean, came out quite far. And about every 25 feet, there were lights, a bulb, and they went off at 10 o'clock at night. But there were 3 million people in Saigon, and so many people came in from the countryside to get away from the war. And they made their homes under this eave. And some of us, others helped. We found cinder blocks, and we found plywood so that we could put these people up 2 feet up in the air, because when the monsoon rains came, it would be a foot of water or something, and there's these little kids. They have to be protected. This one family that I met was a woman who had 3 children. Her name was Bok Tuyet, that means Snow White. And she had 3 little kids. Tanku was 8. Kim Bao was 6. Those are 2 little girls. And the little boy was Phu Khai. He was 4. She worked in the telephone company not far away. She made $20 a month. But she took care of her kids. And I would see her come back at noon and mix up rice on a little charcoal burner she had there in this little hovel that they lived. She took care of her kids. And the embassy always said, don't give money to the nationals because you'll upset their economy. $20 a month for her was a lot of money. But it was Tet. And Tet is the holy time. Well, it's the New Year. It's a better New Year than we have because they use the New Year as a true time of reconciliation. They want to start the New Year out on a clean slate, so they pay off their debts. They go to people whose feelings they hurt or something they did, and they apologize, and they try to just start the new year off. I thought it was a great idea. But I looked at Bok Tuyet, and I looked at those little kids, and I thought, they need food, they need dentistry, they could go to the doctor. They have so many needs. I'll give her $20. And I did. And then I went off. I was invited to a home for 2 days to celebrate this holiday. And when it was over, I came back up that street, and there standing in the street were about 7 of the women who lived along under the eaves. And in the middle of them was standing this young woman in a white dress, and her hair was all piled way up on her head, was sprayed, lacquered, it shone, had chopsticks through it. She looked beautiful. And I looked at her, and then I saw Phu Khai and Tanku and Kim Bao. It was their mother. And she had taken the $20 and gone down to a fancy hairdressing salon in Saigon, and she got her hair fixed. But I saw the look on those 3 children, and they were so proud, and they were so happy, and those smiles told me that was the best investment of 20 bucks I had ever made in my whole life. And the lesson I learned from her was, you've got a good education now. And the whole point is to get out in the world and do things for other people. And you can do that. But remember, whatever you give, it's a gift. No strings. Just give it away. I promise you, it comes back to you 12-fold all the time. That's how the world works. I encourage you. I do want to tell you about this. Now, television. We brought television to Vietnam, and President Johnson wanted television right now, and that's the kind of man he was. Well, it takes maybe 4 or 5 months to build a 12 to 1,500 foot TV tower. He didn't want to waste that time. The Department of Defense gave us this big old airplane, and some of you, more like my age, would remember a big old Constellation airplane. It was quite beautiful, quite graceful, had 4 engines going. They equipped it with videotape recorders, with film projection, sound. We even had a little studio where you could sit there with a little light and one camera. We'd make announcements. It was a flying studio called a flying platform. And we would take that plane 10,000 feet over Saigon, 3 million people down there, and broadcast. We had a telescoping antenna out the tail end of the plane every night. About 2 hours. We'd only get about 2 hours worth of work done. Now, I didn't have to fly the plane often, but now and then. I want to tell you about the first time I went out to get on that airplane. And I came up, and there's this young man, one of the crew, he was a Navy guy, and he handed me a bulletproof vest. Well, it's obvious what it is. You put it on, and it was sort of funny to me because it ties in 3 little bows with just sort of a little string like this. But I thought, and I started up the steps of the plane, and the young man said, Mr. Hall, you don't wear that thing. The bullets come from the ground up. You sit on it. Oh, I thought I have to worry about that too. So I put it in the seat. The problem is they were always shooting at the planes out there at Tanzanite Airport. All the planes got shot at all the time. So to cut down on that, we had to cut that angle down to get the plane in the air as quickly as possible so people can't shoot at you, or as short as possible they can. So here we are on this huge plane, and they started to rev up the motors. Big 4 motors. And I'm sitting on the plane, and the wings are actually going like this. I mean, it's this huge wingspan. And then suddenly, down the runway for as short as possible, and then right straight up in the air. You now have your feet on the ceiling, and you're getting away from the bullets that might come up. It was horrendous. But then when we got to 10,000 feet, then when we started circling Saigon, and I could go up into the cockpit where you could really see, and those beautiful lights. You have Cambodia off to the left, and you've got North Vietnam up there, and you've got the China Sea here, and the Delta region down here, and all those people. And I knew the city pretty well by then, and I knew all of those mothers and fathers and children living in culverts and these cardboard boxes and places under the eaves. And my dream was, I hope that these 2 hours we're going to broadcast down to the ground, will it reach people and will it help their lives? We broadcast where to get your plague shots. We broadcast their history, operas called Kai Lung. We did music programs. I kept thinking, can we inspire some of those little kids to maybe dream and have their own dreams? And you know, you never know. You do your best. You don't know where you plant seeds, but I can promise you, the faculty know. The payoff is doing the best you can at the time, and you hope that those efforts then settled there, go into young minds, and make their lives better for their parents, for themselves, for our society. That's our role. That's our job. Now, I'm going to close with something. I was in this room 20 years ago because a good friend of mine, Flora Sandoz, that's one of the younger sisters of Mari Sandoz, right here was given the Distinguished Service Award from Chadron State College. And the president at the time asked her to make some comments. One of the best speeches I ever heard. This is what Flora Sandoz said. She walked to the podium. She was a no-nonsense person. She looked those graduates right straight in the face, and she said, "Hitch your wagon to your star. Get in harness and pull your own load. There's lots of work to be done. Thank you." And that's what I want to say to you. Thank you. Thank you for the privilege of spending this time with you, and I wish you all great lives and the lives you want. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I want to say thank you for the honorary degree. You have no idea how pleased I am to be honored by Chadron State College. So thank you.